Okay, good. All right, so I've started the recording. All right, breathe. Let's take a breath. Get yourself centered. Feel your feet on the ground and your body in the chair. And let's set our intention for today. I gotta light my candle here. There we go, got the candle. Okay. So what's your intention for today, Joan?
I would like to absorb as much as I can to become the best practitioner and trainer I can be. So I'm looking to absorb as much as I can from everybody.
Okay, good, thank you. Amy?
I put trust myself and to trust life.
Okay, so the question you will ask yourselves is, what stops me from getting there, right? What stops me from trusting life? What stops me from absorbing everything that I can absorb? You know, that's the question that then you go to. That's where the block is, right? Because yes, so that's just as an example of when somebody says something, when they set their intention, you can even start there, because that's the intention of where we're going. What's stopping us from getting there, right? There's the block. Okay, Megan, what's your intention?
Well, I'm in the middle of a second day of just nonstop moving from one thing to the next all day long until bedtime. And so today my intention is to bracket everything that has happened today and everything that is going to happen, and just be really present to take in this information.
Great. Beautiful, thank you. And Sandy? You have to unmute.
I know my pups are awake, and when they hear my voice, they bark. So that's why I'm muted. But I just want to learn as much as I can so that I can help others to do this.
Okay.
Because I think it's very helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so today, so just to review where we've come so far, and I sent you the manual for level 1, which is basically the slides, but there's a cover page, okay, that has the disclaimer. You probably saw that. Okay, so just to review, we have people set their intention. You're going to tell you're going to have people introduce themselves and maybe let you know if they've ever learned EFT before, if they've seen it on the computer. You know, people will come to that first class from different places. So you want to have them introduce themselves, their intention, and then, you know, have they had any exposure to EFT before? And so that's your starting point. Then you're going to tell your story of, you know, why you're even teaching this. What has convinced you it's a good thing? What, you know, where have you come to EFT, and what have you learned from it? Not a big story, but just, you know, a little snippet, just so that they have confidence that you have confidence. Okay, it's basically what you're going to do. And you're going to go through the disclaimer so that they know the limits of this class. The class is really to learn a technique that's effective for reducing stress, or for releasing, you know, stuck energy. And then, or whatever way you remember the bridge. So at the beginning of the class, you're talking, we're going to talk about the bridge, right? How do you describe what EFT is? So your description, whatever you describe. So Joan, if you are talking to someone about EFT, what do you tell them it's about? Simply, what's the point of EFT?
Releasing an emotion. Emotions cause, I'm going to use the word issues, either emotional or physical, or issues in our body from stuck energy. And what EFT does, it's kind of like acupuncture without the needles. It releases the energy to keep flowing.
Beautiful. That's great. So that's the bridge from where they are to where EFT is useful. Amy, how do you describe it to your clients?
I think similarly, I usually say we have like stored up memories or trauma in our mind-body complex. And so it's a way to access that and release it harmoniously. And it's like a self-practice tool. So I usually say sometimes you need somebody to help you, but it's something that creates independence too for you to practice as a tool on your own.
Good. And your clients know that language. They know what you're talking about. Right. So it bridges between where they are and where EFT comes together with where they are. Great. Megan, what do you say?
I use the same thing Joan uses about, it's like acupuncture without the needles.
Okay.
I share that. I share that it's a meridian-based tool that helps them to release energies that are held in the body, emotional energies that are held within the body, that similar to what Amy said, that I believe that traumas and past wounds are held in our body, and it's a way to help start releasing that energy.
Right. Your clients understand that language.
Yes.
Perfect. How about you, Sandy?
I don't have clients, I just have friends. And
well,
so I
if
tell
you're
them
talking
that
to a friend, what would you say?
I say that we have stored memories in our body that are attached to traumas in our life, and this helps break the memory connection to your mind so that you can release it.
Good, good. And your friends know what you're talking about.
Well, if they don't, I explain it further because we talk a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I bill myself as a stress coach or a stress, if I'm doing a stress workshop, I say this is a technique, the best technique I've learned for releasing stress. Okay, I don't get into any technicalities about it because I don't know what their background is, right? So I don't know that they understand some of the language you use. And with my clients, I might use a little bit more. I might say, this is the best thing I know to release. That's where you're stuck. So just keeping it as simple as possible and yet using the language they understand. Megan, you mentioned meridians. Your clients understand that they probably know the word chakra, they probably know the word meridian. So that's great. Acupuncture without the needles, I've used that one too. So it all depends on who you're talking with and what language is going to speak to them about, so that they say, oh, okay, I'm willing to try this. Right, that's the point of the bridge, is helping them to say yes, in trying it. So whatever you need to say that makes sense to them. So if you have your manual, you don't have to have your manual in front of you, but I'm going to go through a few of these things. But before we go on to that, let me say two things. Let me ask you one thing, because Luna said she's not going to make it today, but Luna brought me a two-day intensive mindfulness certification class. Okay. This mindfulness certification class, you can sign up for it. Now it happens to be the fourth session, I think, that we have. It's October, what is the date on this thing? 6 and 7. Okay. I'm thinking I want to take this because it really fits with, certainly mindfulness fits with EFT really well. And of course we do some mindfulness even as we start. But here's the kicker here is that I can sign up as a business for, I'm not sure what it was, 179 or something like that. And I can sign as many people up as I want in my business, right? Which means you can take the class. And I'm trying to think here what. Okay. And there were, now where is that pricing here? Visual forms, blah, blah, blah. Okay, train your whole organization. Attendees pay $79.99. Okay, so the whole course is generally 400 something. I can sign up as a business, and then you guys can take it for $79.99. So if anyone wants to take this mindfulness certification, let me know.
Is it just one day?
It's 2 days.
2 days. And how many hours a day?
It's online. Yes, Tuesday and
Oh,
Wednesday.
it's not a Zoom. It's just something that you just take online. Oh, so you.
It's a webcast. It's like a Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Do they have a place where we can find out a little bit more about it?
Yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan this in.
Okay.
I'll send it to you because we have a little time. And it'll tell you everything
And
about.
what was the date again, Ayla?
It's actually 8 to 4 with an hour, 11:50 to 1 o'clock lunch break.
But we can look at it any time. We don't have to be there during those hours.
I'm not sure. So
Okay.
I didn't read this carefully yet. So she gave me, I will send it to you. It says register by October 6th. So that's the day it starts. And so I'll scan this in and send it to you. I just want to get that out of the way right in the beginning. But here's the real issue is October I want to say 6th, but it could be the 7th.
It's the 7th is the day that we have a session.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the issue. Does anyone have a problem with going another week instead of doing the 7th?
Anything you do is fine with me.
Yeah, I will be out of town, but I could still be on the call. It's just if there's something, if the internet's not okay, you can just record it for me. Is that okay? But I'll try to.
Yeah.
I'll try to be on the call. I've just never stayed at this place before, so I'm not real sure about their internet service.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Okay, that sounds good. So we'll move that 7th to the 14th. And then I'm going to take that mindfulness class. And if you want to take the mindfulness class, let me know. Okay? Certification. Okay, I just wanted to get that out of the way. All right, so what we're going to do today, so we're talking about training level 1. And then next week, we'll talk about training level 2. Okay, so training level 1 is the introduction to EFT. It's for your personal use primarily, and you can help other people reduce stress with it. But it's not going to that deeper core release level. Does that make sense? So the important thing about EFT 1 is you're teaching people how to do the technique, why it's important, where it came from. So we're doing, so the slides and the process is somewhat repetitive. And you're going to go through the tapping points over and over and over again. Now, we are going to teach them that there's a shortcut. And by the end of the class, you really want them to have enough motor memory of the technique so that they remember how to do it. Now, I also sent you the tapping points. So you're going to give them the points so that they have a cheat sheet so they know that they won't forget the points. So level 1 is really about making the bridge, giving them language for the technique, and helping them to learn the technique. So we're going to do the tapping points and so on. And the slides reflect that. So in this case, you're just sticking with the slides. They're going to do some practice. And the practice is going to be pretty much on the surface of stress and, things that bring up stress. So what I like to do before you get into the content and people move right up to their heads, keep in mind the ego is going to be wondering whether this is a good idea or not, right? So the first thing is you've already explained to them why you think it's a good idea and that it works, and your confidence in it, and why you have some confidence in it. So the very next step I do is we tap. Before I teach them anything, and you remember this from when we did, you may or may not remember, but when we started, we just tapped on stress in general. I ask people to just think of something that stresses you or someone that stresses you. 0 to 10, how bad is it? Where are you feeling it in your body? So they're just actually engaged in the experience of feeling the stress, feeling it in their body, and then we do a round of tapping. We might do it once or twice. If it's a large group of people, you won't go through and ask people, but you'll just start with, even though I have this reaction to this situation, I can feel it in my fill in the blank. Where are you feeling it? I accept myself anyways. I've done this with like 100 people in a room. Okay, it's a social work conference, right? And we just do a generic, they're feeling it. They know where they're feeling it. They know how bad it is, and they know the situation they've just brought to mind. So I ask them to fill in the blank with their own. So even though I have this situation or this person that makes me feel anxious or stressed, I accept myself anyway. And even though it actually hurts me in my body, fill in the blank where you feel it, I accept myself anyway. And even though, and I throw this in, even though this tapping isn't going to help one bit, I accept myself anyway. So everybody laughs at that point, okay? I just throw that in because that's probably what they're thinking. Maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but for the most part, people will think, this isn't going to do a darn thing about that, because that has bothered me all my life, right? So I just throw that in because the ego is probably thinking that along that way, right? I'm not letting go of this because it's protecting you, right? The reaction is protecting you. So I throw that in. It adds a little humor, but it also is the truth that the ego pretty much feels like, I'm not letting go of this.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
So when you say, even though this may not help one bit, is the second part, I deeply and completely love and accept myself, or it's just, even though this may not help one bit?
I accept myself anyway.
I accept myself anyway, okay.
That's usually what I say.
Okay.
It's simpler. And I don't know that at that point, at level 1, you don't know that people are even at a place where they love themselves, right? So I don't throw in love yet.
Okay.
I just accept myself anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Excuse me. Even though it hurts me. So it hurts me someplace in my body, accept myself anyway. Just thinking about it causes me a problem. Okay, then we tap on all the points. So we're going to start at the top of the head. I don't explain the points. I just say, do what I do, say what I say. That way they don't have to think about it. Just watching, do what I do, and say what I say. So this stress bothers me. it hurts this part of my body. Fill in the blank, your part of the body. I might do one or both sides. If I do one side, say, doesn't matter which side you do. You tap side of your eye. You might have to move your glasses. I'll tell people to do the bottom of your, right on the bone, under your nose, above your lip, in the chin groove, collarbone, and I'll say to them, feel the bone, your collarbone, right under the collarbone in the soft tissue. You can do one side, the other side, or both. Yeah, go ahead, Joan.
If you open your hand to make sure you get the right spot.
Yeah, I noticed you did that, and that's great. I don't clarify. I just tap.
Okay.
They're tapping with me, but I noticed you do that. That's fine. Yeah.
I never know if I'm getting the right spot. So.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Sandy.
Some of the classes I've taken, they start with the eye and end with the head. Do you think it matters or?
No,
Okay.
it doesn't matter as long as you get to now. When
I do my clavicle, I do both sides,
that's fine.
just like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
When Gary started, the top of the head wasn't one of the points. He started here.
Yeah, that's where most of the classes I've taken, they start here and they end here.
Right, because he added that later.
Okay.
However, I start here because one of the reasons they do the points in this order, because it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
What he said was, we're working down the body so we remember the points. Well, if that's true, why don't we do
Then you would start here. Yeah, I see.
Would make sense to me. Start here.
Yeah.
And then here, and then here, and then here, because it's starting at the top of the body, so you remember the points. That was the purpose. It really doesn't matter what order you do the points in.
Okay.
You could start here. So that's where the shortcut comes in, right? The shortcut, once you've learned, for instance, last week, Amy was working and it turned out this was her point that all that was stuck in. We didn't have to do any other pulls. We could just start right there. And
also, you may feel in one point more than in another. I've never had that, but okay.
yeah, well, yes, because you haven't gone to that point, that level yet, Sandy. But if you do, what you'll see is you'll have a sigh or a shift in your perception or something will change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay?
I've noticed that.
And that's the point. That's what we call your point.
Okay. I
The
see.
one where stuff will most often be stuck.
When things will shift.
Right.
So you may not feel like an extra. Well, now what if a certain point is more tender than another? Does that mean anything?
Not necessarily. It might. I mean, it might be your point, but not necessarily. Sometimes
And just one more question: will the point change with the emotion or with whatever you work on? Okay.
It can. That's what I'm saying. So Amy said to us, "That's not usually my point."
Okay.
But what we were working on, that was the one that was working best for.
Yeah, because I've noticed the sigh in different places when I'm
right.
When I'm doing that, and I take that to be the shift.
Yes.
Things have changed.
Yes. And when you're working with someone, once it shifts and you notice that, you can shortcut by not doing all the points. You can do that point. And usually I'll do the one before and the one after.
Okay.
Because I don't know exactly where it shifted. And even said that. So that's, In level 1, we're not even doing that yet. We're doing all the points.
Okay. Just so they learn the pattern.
We're starting it. Yeah, they're learning the pattern. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So you're doing the setup. You're asking to judge 0 to 10. First, what stresses you? 0, where is it in your body? Right? Because we want them to identify how stress affects them in their body. 0 to 10, how bad is it? I ask them, write that down because they'll probably forget by the time they're done what it was like in the beginning. And then we tap. and we're doing it generic. So fill in the blank with what you're experiencing, your stress, what you were thinking, where you feel it in your body. So as we're tapping, that's what they're tuning into. We'll do the body points and then breathe. Now, I want you to think about the thing you started with. 0 to 10, how is it now? How do you feel it now in your body? Then I might ask the question, how many people 0 to 10 is lower? Raise your hands. If you only have a group of 4 or 5 people, you can just ask them, okay? Because you've just got a small group and you can make it a little more personal. If you have a large group, you're going to be generic. So you say, how many? And usually the majority will put their hand up. Then I ask people, look around the room. Are you surprised that so many people have a result of less stress with just what we did so far? It's the proof, okay, because this is your starting point. It's the proof to the ego that this can work. And that's all you're doing at the beginning. You're just proving to people that it's possible for tapping to make a difference in how you feel in this moment. That's all we're doing. We're not working at this point. We're just showing them that just tapping will make a difference at the surface level of stress, of whatever stresses you. So now the mind is checked in. Now the person is interested. So just as a speaker, I've learned that when you start any speech, any presentation you're going to do, the first thing you want to do is engage the audience so that they're with you, they're present with you, right? So you might ask them a question, you might tell a story about something that they are interested in. You could do any number of things to engage them. You can do a poll, raise your hand if this is true. So that's what I start with. Who's stressed? Everybody's got stress. Who's got stress? Okay, this is a technique that will help relieve that. Let's try it and see. Megan, did you have something?
I was just raising my hand that I'm stressed.
And I'm going to guess, Megan, is from all this stuff you're doing from morning till night and without a break.
That's exactly right.
That would be stressful. Yeah. So, and I've got a thing here. I think this might have been something you said earlier. Oh, your pups are awake. Okay. Let's make sure I didn't ignore. Let's see. Okay. Now I don't know how to get back. There we go. Oh, no. Okay, we're back. Okay, so yeah, so this is the beginning of a class. Whether you're doing a large class or a small class, the introduction to EFT is all about learning that the technique works and how to do it. And then answering some questions that the ego might have, like who made this up and where did it come from, and why does it work, that kind of thing. So that's where your slides are going. So bottom line, when they're done with this class, you want them to know that it works and how it works and how to do it. They're not going any further than that. You're not really going into all the depth of releasing. That's level 2. Now what you will do is tell them that. So in level 2, and you might say it periodically during your class because it's appropriate, you'll say, well, in level 2, you'll learn how to release even deeper material, or you'll help people release even deeper material. So my social work group, so I'm talking to social workers, I'm going to throw that in quite a bit because I really want them to, they're working with other people at deeper levels, how this works with trauma, this works with pain relief. If I'm working with nurses, I'm going to talk to them about alternatives to medication for pain because that's what they're able to work with. Now with my attorneys, and, accountants, I'm not going there. I might tell them you can actually release more deeper material if you get stuck. A lot of times in your life, you notice something happens and it always triggers you. You can find a practitioner to work with that will take you to a deeper level. Okay, so it's all appropriate to the people you're working with. Now, if you are advertising level 1 EFT, then you're probably going to have people, and on your website, you can also have level 1, level 2. You might give a discount for them taking both. Well, now you've got people who are interested in helping other people. You're going to talk about that, how this can help at a deeper level, how you can help other people with it. But level 1, they only have the skill to work on the surface, to work with stress reduction, no matter what's causing that stress reduction. Okay, so that's the clarity between level 1 and level 2. And then you'll say whatever is appropriate for the people that are in front of you, whoever that may be. Okay. Okay, so the first few slides just talk about what EFT is. So we're doing the bridge, and you're focusing your mind on a negative event, right? You're stimulating the meridians while focusing. So here we haven't really gotten into meridians. You can say the word, the slide says that, but they don't necessarily know what meridians are. In Megan's case, her people do, but not most people. And then it says uses common spots. The genius of EFT is you can pull up what's bothering you, even though it isn't in this moment, and release it immediately, like just touching certain points. So we haven't gotten into the science of it yet. Then they go into the history, and they talk about Albert Einstein and E = mc squared. And you probably remember I say, energy is everything. I just translate that little sentence into energy is everything. And at that point, I usually go into, and even before that, I might do this actually at the beginning. It varies from when I do it. But you may remember, I probably did this with you guys when you took level 1. I put it into the terms that people understand. For example, when you've seen a deceased body in your life, right? Everybody's seen someone who died. All the hardware is still there. The brain is still there. The organs that haven't been removed, everything is still there. There's only one thing missing. What would you call it? So that's what that simple image is what I presented. What would you call it? People will call it energy. They'll call it spirit. They'll call it soul. They can call it anything they want, but it's the energy that's missing. It's the consciousness. It's the, soul, the spirit, the energy is missing. Right. So to understand this, so from a nursing perspective, I'll go into the systems of the body. You could do it any way you want, but I'll say to them, there's a circulatory system. The body is full of systems. Circulatory system, the blood, it goes through the heart, through the arteries, the veins, the capillaries. That's the system. It circulates. We have an electrical system. The brain, the spinal cord, the neurons in your whole body, that's the electrical system. In terms of the energy, it moves through the meridian system. And until recently, we couldn't see that. Now we have technology where you can actually determine where meridians are. But for 5,000 years, Chinese medicine has charted these meridians. And acupuncturists know that there are certain meridians that govern certain parts of the body. And so they'll use little needles or pins to if they've taken a history from you, and they'll use those to identify where the stimulation needs to happen. Now, Gary Craig, which is on this page, Gary Craig observed from a course he took in thought field therapy, which was the slide right before that. He observed that in the class, he's an engineer, a Stanford engineer, he observed that the meridians crisscross at 14 places. And he surmised that if we just stimulate those 14 places, maybe we could have results even without knowing where things are stuck. And sure enough, that's the case, and that's EFT. We can create emotional freedom, getting that emotion unstuck by just stimulating 14 places, and we don't have to know where it was stuck. It released, which you just experienced at the beginning of this class, right? Because we already did that. So now I can say, you already saw that that's how it works. We just tapped the points and you felt better. So Gary is the one who came up with that. So that's a part of this history and where EFT fits in this whole idea of energy therapy or energy psychology. So these are some of the terms that are used today to describe work with the meridian system, with the energy system of the body. So that's the way I help the mind to understand why it worked, why what we did earlier worked. And it's right here on the slides. So you're just helping them to make sense out of that. And then we go through even more descriptions of that. So that EFT is that the mind and the body are not separate. Right? The mind and the body are not separate. So the tapping actually helps, whether it's a thought you have that stresses you, whether it's the body, you're feeling the anxiety in your heart, in your belly. I might go back and ask them, well, where did you feel it at the beginning? Isn't that where you usually feel your stress? You know, people generally, no matter what stresses you, you're going to feel it in the same place because that's your trigger, that's your weak spot. And it's attached to a point, but we don't know which point it is. So as we're doing the tapping, you might see them sigh, you might see them relax, you might see them get surprised. Oh, it's gone. You know, where did that go? That's the point that's connected to your stuck energy. That's the meridian. It somehow comes together at that point, whichever one it is. So the mind and the body are not separate. Now, I usually do a little demonstration of that. You may remember the hands. Did we do the hands where you have a line across your wrist on both sides? Okay, you can line up those lines and roll your hands up. And you'll notice, in my case, let's see if I can show it here. Okay, this finger's a little longer than the other, right? So usually one side will be a little longer than the other. I want you to observe the short side and focus on your hand. And we do this little exercise. Focus on your hand for a second. You can do this or not. This is not EFT. This is just an example of how the mind and body are not separate. So focus on the short hand. Looking at your short hand. Take the hands apart. Yeah, take the shorter hand. Looking at the shorter hand. Repeat after me. Wow.
Wow.
My hand's getting longer.
My hand's getting longer.
That's hard to believe.
That's hard to believe.
My fingers are getting longer. My palm is getting longer. My hand's actually longer. Wow, that's amazing. Are you saying this? I'm not hearing you.
I'm whispering it.
Oh, okay.
We're on mute.
Oh, okay. That's amazing. My hand is actually longer. So Line those lines up again and roll your hands up and see what happened.
That's cool.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Now, sometimes it doesn't work because we didn't do it long enough, but in your case, I mean, you guys are open to the working with this. So what does that tell you about your mind and your body? You know, what you think affects what happens. You know, so how do your thoughts affect your life? What happens in your life? What goes on? You can go through any kind of explanations you like based on your background and your participants. So if your participants are they understand this, in Megan, your case, some of your participants, especially if you're working with the people who are kind of your followers, they might understand all of that language that goes with the law of attraction, right? You can connect it to that. Amy, your clients have been through what kinds of background stuff before?
All the stuff that I have, you know, codependency,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera.
Trauma, you mentioned trauma earlier, you mentioned that. Yeah, so you can connect this whole mind body to their experience based on your knowledge of them, right? You can talk about the fact that in trauma, your whole system gets shook up. You don't even know where it started, right? Or where it is in your body because the whole body is affected and your mind, right? So isn't it a relief to just be able to tap these points and not have to know all of that or go back through all of that trauma again? You know, because the mind and the body are connected through the energy system. Sandy, you said friends. So what your friends probably have a base of information you all believe.
No, some of them do, some of them don't.
Okay.
I mean, I have a group of nurses that they would all know, but not all of them believe in the energy part of it.
Right.
They're more traditional.
So,
And then I have a lot of older friends. I mean, and they aren't familiar with any of it.
right. Your nurse friends, it might be helpful to talk about the systems.
Yeah.
That's why I do that, because I'm a nurse. So there's a circulatory system, the electrical system. This is the energy system.
Yeah. Well, and every nurse would connect with seeing a body versus seeing a person, because all of us have seen that moment. I mean, other people may just see it as after the moment, but we see it in the moment.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's profound.
Right. It is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So where did the energy come from and where did it go? Right.
Yeah.
That helps them to get their mind in the.
You know, a little parlor trick I did in one of my classes. There's a little gizmo that you can get off of Amazon that if you hold one hand on one hand and one hand on the other, it lights up in the middle.
Okay.
And you can hold it in one hand, and then you grasp the hand of somebody else beside you. You go around the room, and then when the last person connects, the lights come on, but it doesn't come on until we're all connected.
Wow.
So that's one way that I've showed them that energy is in the body.
Wonderful. That's a great example. So instead of this, you can do that.
Yeah, we've done that. And the weird thing was when people tried it themselves, they had different levels of the lights lighting up.
Okay.
And a lot of times the people that didn't light up as much were sicker.
Okay.
Which I found was very interesting.
It is.
So,
it is. Yeah. So if you could send me a link to that gizmo.
Oh, I sure will.
I'll send it to everybody, you know, in case that's something you want to use.
I'll actually send you a gizmo.
You don't have to do that.
No, I know I don't, but I will, because it was very interesting to me. That worked.
So that's how you can do this with your group. Exactly. Yeah. It's just demonstrating how the connection works, the mind-body connection and energy works. So you can use anything at all that is something you're familiar with to help them make that connection.
Yeah.
Now, Gary uses he calls it the discovery statement. The cause of all negative emotions is a disruption in the body's energy system. What he uses as an example is a TV set. Now, today, we don't have the same TV sets we had back then with the rabbit ears and so on. Some of your young clients won't even know what you're talking about if you use this example. However, it's a good example in that you're seeing a picture. How does that even work where the message comes from a radio station or a TV station and somehow it gets into your TV set? Who knows how this works? How does Zoom work? You know, we don't understand all the workings of it. We only know you turned it on at your house and I turned it on at my house, and here we are talking to each other, right? So Gary talks about how you move the rabbit ears and trying to get a clear picture. And then when you have a distorted picture, there's a reason for that. Something is wrong with the wiring. In this case, there was something in the old TV set. There was actually wires. There were wires that connected it. So if you mess with the wires, you get a distorted picture. It's not the original message that's distorted. It's the screen that's not showing you the correct message. It's showing you a distortion. And that's where your perception of the message somebody's sending can be distorted. You're not getting a clear message because there's a distortion in the middle. That's what we're straightening out. We're straightening out the distortion. So then you can see things more clearly. Then you can perceive things as they really are instead of as you thought they were because of old history or whatever. So he talks about, so the negative thought comes in, and then if the message is distorted, you're having a reaction that's not appropriate to what the message really was. Megan?
So something that's coming up for me, I wanted to see if you think this is appropriate. If I were working with counselors and nurses and social workers, and I'm talking about this body-mind connection, I would probably bring up the ACEs study.
Sure.
And because there's so much evidence that what happens to us comes out as these physical and physiological symptoms.
Right. And so ACEs is adverse childhood experiences. And yes, there's lots of evidence now, and that would be an excellent connector to the mind-body connection. Yes.
Okay.
Sure, because most of these people will have been in an ACEs class of some sort. They'll have been anyway.
Right.
Yes. That's a bridge for them.
Mm-hmm.
Good. You can use anything that's appropriate to your class and your own knowledge and background. So yeah, you don't have to use what I use. What I use comes out of my background, right, as a nurse. What you use will come out of whatever yours is, and your participants. They'll understand your language. That's great. Is that making sense? So all we're doing is making the connection in the mind to why this works. When you're not really dealing with logic and reason necessarily, you're dealing with the experience, physical, emotional, and thought. All of those pieces come together and have a response. And so we're just explaining how that works. And you can use any model at all that helps to make the connection to how it works. And especially, Amy, I know you work with cognitive, rational emotive work and cognitive work. So understanding why it happens and how it happens is not bad. And it doesn't release it in the body. It doesn't release the emotion of that experience in the body. It does help you to understand it, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that, because it's good that the mind understands it. And now let's release it so that it doesn't trigger you over and over and over again. They also use a hose, okay? So for people who are thinking in terms of real tangibility, the hose is crimped, the water can't get through. Pretty simple. So that's stuck energy. The energy is stuck. In terms of the circulatory system, we would talk about clots, right? Clots get stuck and the blood can't pass through, and then you have a heart attack. Okay, so this stuck energy has to do with having a reaction that's distorted from where the actual experience, actual situation is. You're emotionally reacting to something that maybe someone else doesn't react to. Okay, so here's the other thing. We know that, so a particular person, say in your workplace, right? This particular person irritates the heck out of you, but someone else is their friend and they don't have any problem with them. Is it the person that's the stress? No, it's your reaction to it, to that person. That's the distorted message you're getting. Well, what is that person representing to you? It's obviously not the same thing it's representing to your coworker, because they don't have a problem with them. Okay, if we went, we can even go back and who do they remind you of? Oh, it reminds me of my mother, it reminds me of my father. They're just as ignorant as my brother, or whoever it was that's triggering this reaction in you, but it's yours. It's not them. They're just reminding you of this situation that you had when you were younger, right? So we know that the stressor is not out here, it's in here. It's the reaction to whatever's going on, because it doesn't affect everyone the same way. If it was them, everyone would have a problem with it. But it's not just them. Okay, so then it goes into EFT, what it works for. So it works for PTSD, fear, phobias. It works for the things nothing else seems to work for. There's the clue right there too, right? So phobias is an amazing, it's really hard to get rid of a phobia. We get rid of phobias in like split seconds. I can't tell you how many people in my class have got rid of a phobia. It just happens so fast. They're amazed. I actually have a video. I may have shown it to you, and I've shown it in classes before. A little girl, she's 11, who had a fear of spiders. So she came to the level 1 class with her mom one day, because the mother was saying to her that this thing could help. So she came, and so we did a little demonstration with her, and I'm happy to share that with you. In fact, I might just put it, no, it's not on YouTube. So I'll just share it with you maybe the next time we get together. And so we cleared the spider, and then the next thing that came up was shots. And then we cleared the shots, and I'm trying to think what the next thing was, but the point of it was the serum. It was the idea of the toxin from the spider, the serum from this. So these things were related, but it was all connected to one fear, right? And then it left, and she didn't have any fear at all. And then she talked about tests, and that was the end of that. 11-year-old, well, yeah, kids are great. Kids, boom, 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 and you're done. It's because they haven't held on to this belief for 40 years. They're pretty quick. It's pretty new. Whatever happened to them happened just in the last few years. So they can release it pretty quick. But phobias are amazing, because phobias are not logical, right? The whole point of a phobia is it's an irrational fear. So understanding it won't help one bit, because it's not rational, right? So how do you help that? And So the tapping, though, releases it right from the body, and then it's gone. It's just so amazing. And I know I've shown the, usually show it in level 2, the veterans, Gary working with the veterans in California, where the guy had the phobia, the height phobia. Boom, it's gone. He steps up on the fire escape and he's fine. So yeah, phobias are amazing. Depression, addictions. Okay, so addiction is another place. Una, who's not here today, but she used this, and I'll have her maybe talk about it next time, because next time we're really going to talk about level 2. She talked about, and she used it with detox patients. Now, detox patients are not logically, rationally connected because they're in detox. You know, they're still affected by the drugs or the alcohol. So she used the tapping, and they were amazed. I mean, it's like working with kids who don't have that deep cognitive filter, right? It's just right there in the moment, physically, they felt better. And so they were really amazed and loved it. So that's a good example too of how it works with addiction and then pain, physical pain. I've used it a lot for fibromyalgia. I have several people with fibromyalgia that no longer have pain. Now, level 2, we go into how to work on those deeper levels with the original trauma. Level 1, we're just explaining to them that it can have a deeper result. That all of these things is what it works for. And so the mantra is try it on everything. Will it work on a migraine headache? Try it. Will it work on the grief over a diagnosis? Answer anything. Try it. Try it. It'll work on. Try it on everything. The grief of losing a person, right? The grief of a death, and so on. So then we go into the constricted breathing exercise. So now we're going to show how it works, even on something as basic as breathing. I don't know if you remember this little exercise, but this is in level 1, where you take a deep breath and let it out. Do that a couple of times. On a scale of 0 to 100%, what percentage do you think you're breathing of what you could be breathing? And then just take note of that. Okay, let's try it again. So we're gonna do the setup on the karate chop point. And they give you the script right here. Even though I'm not breathing to my full capacity, I completely accept myself. Even though I'm not breathing to my full capacity, I deeply and completely accept myself. Third time. Even though I'm not breathing at my full capacity, I deeply and completely accept myself. We're going to go through the points, top of your head, between the eye. I do between the eyes like the 2 points. Okay, you can do 1 point. Side of the eye, under the eye, under the nose, collarbone, under the arm. Take a deep breath. What percentage are you breathing now? Is it more than the first time you did it? I see 2 heads shaking, 3 heads shaking, and 4 heads shaking. Yes, you're breathing a little bit deeper. Okay. So now we go into the basic recipe. it says is a part of a short, simple 3-step process. And now we're going into teaching the basic recipe, which is the setup, the points, and then we'll get into the 9 gamut. So here, every step, every slide is just taking you into the steps, into the process. Clarify the intensity and test the intensity. Perform the simple setup that links the issue to an acceptance statement, and then tap the 8 meridian points while focusing on your issue. So we're just doing the face and body at this point. Now we're going to clarify how to get specific. It says for results that are terrific, it's best to be specific, right? So this is a key point in why EFT doesn't work. It's because we're not tapping on what's actually the issue. So getting specific is one of the key elements in getting it to work right. Choose a specific issue, name it, and be specific about when and how. We're just going through slide by slide. We're taking it down to the basic thing. I don't like my job. Okay, so how to make it more specific. When I was at the office party, everyone ignored me. I felt left out. So that's much more specific than I don't like my job. Or I feel depressed. So question, now this, when we get into level 2, we're going to get into the questions you can ask to get more specific. But the key point here is, when was a moment that you felt that way, right? How do you know you're depressed? Well, how do I know I'm depressed? Because most people have not thought about this. They just use the term depressed. Well, I don't have any energy when I get up in the morning. I can't focus. So what are the physical, emotional thoughts that tell you you're depressed? How do you know? How do you know you're anxious? Well, I feel on edge. I feel jittery. Where do you feel it in your body? And now we're getting more specific, right? So the important thing is, when you do EFT, the first step, find something specific to tap on. So when we started, we said, you're stressed. Well, what made you stressed, right? What's one person or situation that gives you that stress reaction? So I asked you to be specific in your own mind. I don't know what it was, but you know. How do you know you're upset? Well, I feel it where? Where do you feel it in your body? Okay, now let's tap. So you're thinking of the situation that you put in your mind, the picture of the person or situation, and you know where you felt it in your body. Now we're being specific. Okay, so this is key is being specific so you know what to tap on. Then the test. How bad is it? From 0 to 10. So the SUD, subjective unit of distress, how bad is it? And so you're doing the SUD. So we're teaching the technique step by step in detail. After each round, you're going to test again. You're going to ask that same question, just like we did with the breathing. So now what percentage are you breathing? So the SUD can be 0 to 10. It can be a percentage. It can be really any measure you want, but it tells you before and after, did something happen? After clarifying the issue and testing, so I'm just going through the slides here, there's a 3-part statement that you're going to go through on the karate chop point. That you accept yourself, even though you have this issue, problem, feeling. Sandy.
Do you wait for a shift before you stop doing the round? Because I mean, sometimes you'll go through a whole round and you won't feel anything. Do you do another round before you would stop and evaluate where you are? Or do you wait for a shift before you evaluate?
Good question. And what I would do, Sandy, is find out where we're not being specific first.
Ah.
Because if you went through a round and
And you didn't get a shift, you need to be more specific.
if nothing happened, we're being too general. That's my guess.
Okay.
That would be my guess. So I would start again and say, okay, let's go back to the issue we're talking about.
So you should feel a shift every round you do.
Yeah.
Because I don't. Sometimes it'll take a couple of rounds before I feel anything. So you
And
think
you're
I'm
doing
just
this-
not being specific enough.
You're doing this by yourself?
Yeah.
You're not being specific enough. Yeah,
Okay.
that's my guess. And the reason for that is you'll usually have something. It might be worse. It might not feel better. It might feel worse because now a deep.
See, I just had a deep breath. I had a shift. So I understood more what you're saying.
What's that?
I said, I just now took a deep breath, so I had a shift. I understand more what you're saying.
Okay.
About being
Okay.
specific.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's generally what I would say is something we weren't right on target. If we're on target, usually there'll be something. And like I said, the shift could be, your 0 to 10 could be worse because you actually got to a deeper level of the issue.
And if you go up in the level, that means you're getting to something deeper, and you need to be more specific.
Well, and let's find out what that is.
Yeah.
Before we go to that next level. Yeah, because here's the thing. Let me take a breath here and make sure. What I'll ask someone is are you picturing the same thing you started with? Right? Because if you're picturing the same thing you started with, it probably feels better. But what naturally happens is once that's released, something else comes up. It might be an actual incident where the issue was the most prevalent in your life, where it really started, or what's reminding you of it. So keep in mind, your original issue has come up over and over and over and over and over again. The most recent time might be last week when you were at work with this particular person. We've now tapped on that person and how they make you feel. And what's come up next is, oh, when I was 16, here's what actually happened that made me feel the same way. When was another time you felt that way in your life? When was an earlier time you felt that way? That's going to bring it to more of the,
That was where you got me with the frozen shoulder, and it reminded me that my mother also had it.
Yes.
And then I just broke down crying. That had been 18 years before that she died.
Right.
But it was and interestingly enough, my daughter now has a frozen shoulder.
Really?
Yeah. Which is weird.
Well,
but it may have happened. I just now have that because we haven't seen each other in 9 months.
Okay.
I just now thought of that.
Yeah. So it was a grief. The grief was stuck in your shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm remembering now that you're telling me. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was bad, but it was good. But yeah, now I just had that insight that because we haven't seen each other, that could be the same thing.
Right. The loss of the connection.
Although she swears tapping doesn't work for her, so I don't know how it will help.
It may be a little harder for her to make the connection with you doing the tapping. I don't know. It shouldn't. It really shouldn't matter. However, she may not be. Her ego may not allow herself to go there with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fear of the vulnerability of what would come up. Right?
Yep. That may be true. That may be true.
It would make sense if that's the case. I don't know if that's the
Well, it
case.
doesn't matter. I had an insight anyway, whether she does or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
And really just sharing your insight on what happened.
Maybe just sharing it with her, that may be. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Who knows? Yeah. Yeah. Worth a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amy.
I have a confession that I don't want to make, but I feel like I must, which is I think a fair amount of the time I don't want to get specific with people.
Okay. And what do you think that's about? Do you know what that's about?
I wonder if it's like some people where they go, I'm just uncomfortable.
Okay.
It's interesting because I can think of some people could maybe cry and I could be present and let them be. I don't know if I get lost. I don't feel uncomfortable with somebody being emotional or crying, but maybe it's like knowing what to do next. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I know with you, like, I sometimes not only is there sighing when I did work with you, I would have like a total breakdown. Like you, I think I mentioned this, like you would even tap for me because I couldn't even tap myself. So I don't think philosophically I have a problem being present with somebody who's having a breakdown, but something in me may not like that. I don't know what you think of that idea.
So last time you brought up the fact that it was uncomfortable to go to the sensations in the body, right, with somebody. And so worked on that. So we may have to work on a little more of that, but let me ask you this question. One of the things that occurs to me, I don't know if this is true, what occurs to me is you're a therapist. So you're feeling maybe that what comes up next might be something that's out of your skill level to deal with in terms of therapy. But if it was just to tap on the next thing, where you don't have to know anything about it or how to fix it. Okay, so there may be this sense of, you talk about confidence, the sense of lack of confidence that you'll be able to handle what came up next. If all you have to do is tap on what comes up next and not have to understand it or make sense out of it, would that help in feeling more confident? That you don't have to shift over then to the therapist role. You could just tap on it, on the very next thing that came up, and not have to explain it or understand it.
I think that was a little easier. I don't mind not seeing my clients in person, partially because I feel like it doesn't affect my energy as much. Like, but the negative is that in cases like this, if somebody was sitting in my office weeping, it would be easier to be present with them, I think, than on Zoom. I don't know if that's true. I think I might feel more ease being physically with a person who's suffering, because you could just be there in that space with them. But
okay, so here's the thing, Amy. If they're weeping, they're tapping. Okay, if emotion is up, that's perfect. That's the perfect time to tap. You don't have to ask any questions. You don't have to do any setup. You don't have to do anything but tap. Because as you tap, the cortisol level comes down. This is what they've proved. This is the evidence. The cortisol level comes down and they start to calm down. You don't have to have words. You don't have to set up. You don't have to do. If the emotion is there, that's all you want. That's what you want. That's the gold. The only reason we ask the questions is to get there, is to get to where are you feeling it, and what's the picture you have when you're feeling that reaction. That's all we really want, and then we can tap on it. So the beauty of EFT is you can bring up something that's not here right now and literally let it release, right? So you're remembering when it bothered you now. Tapping. If it's right there in front of you, You're just tap, 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 tapping. Now, I frequently will tap on the person because as a nurse, I can do that. I'm allowed to touch people. As a minister, which some people will get their ministry online, and I know you've got that, Amy, you can touch people. If not, I have a therapist who just taps what we call surrogate tapping. She taps herself for the person, but because energy transfers, right? Energy is a field, and this person is in the field with you, whether they're online or whether they're with you in person or whether they're on the phone. You are part of an energy field with them. So tapping on yourself, and when I'm on the phone with my clients, I'm tapping with them. I'm always tapping with them. 2 reasons. One, because I'm tapping for them and I'm part of their energy field, so that doubles the effect. You know, if we tap as a group, just like if you meditate in a group, you're multiplying the effect. I've had that experience many times when you're doing it with other people, right? So I will always be tapping with my client. If they can't tap for themselves, you're tapping for them. It's a surrogate tapping. And that therapist has affirmed to me that it works, even if they're just tapping on themselves for that person, because the energy transfers. A person you can read on this is Larry Dossey, D-O-S-S-E-Y, Larry Dossey, who's written a number of books. Sandy's saying, I felt the energy when the group tapped for me in class. Yes, yes, we always do that. I always tell everybody tap together because there is the borrowing benefits aspect of EFT, right? You're borrowing the benefits. We all have the human experience as a core. And so when you're tapping with the other person, you're going to get some relief. A, just tapping is going to bring the cortisol level down. B, probably something in their experience relates to something in your experience. Also, when I've had a class, generally speaking, there will be a theme that runs through the class that everybody sort of has issues that are very similar. I had a class once where everybody had grief issues. I had a class where people had physical pain, you know, and it was from a trauma, an early trauma. It's really interesting how that happens. It's like, and this is sort of law of attraction, right? That people will come at the same time. It just amazes me. And you couldn't plan it if you wanted to. Or maybe it's just because we have a common humanity. Those issues that this person's bringing up are coming up in you too, and it seems like the whole class has the same issue. Who knows? Who knows? But the fact of the matter is it works. So, Amy, if someone's crying, see, there's something, and you can go back into this, we won't do it right now, something in your vulnerability that says, uh-oh, your ego's going, uh-oh, you ought to know what to do with this. And you don't feel like you do. You probably do, but you, for whatever reason at that moment, so okay, think about this. When you're in a stressful situation, it's fight or flight, right? Or freeze. So you're in that moment, and here comes the anxiety. It goes, you're crying. Okay, so you're having a stress reaction. The energy is moving from your brain. This actually, blood is rushing from your brain, and you can't think of what to do, right? It's just like a test. If you're in a test and you have test anxiety, boom, you have all the answers. You've studied for forever, and now all of a sudden you can't think of an answer because the energy is all, the blood is all rushed to your arms and legs to fight or flight. So just tapping puts you back. It releases the stress that you're having just with the, they're crying, releases your stress. Now you can think again. And yes, you probably can make those cognitive connections that help you also, right? Just tap. If there's emotion, you're tapping because it's emotional freedom we're looking for. And that's as human beings, that's it. You know, somebody's angry, somebody's frustrated, somebody's crying, and we go, now what? What do I say or do that's going to be helpful? There's nothing you can say or do that's going to be helpful. Let's tap. Tapping is the most helpful thing you can do. Because at that point, the reaction is going to subside because the cortisol level has come down. Now we can think, now they can speak, now they may be able to make some connection as to why that happened. It was interesting, Sandy, because we tapped a couple of times this morning, and here you made the connection pretty fast between your shoulder and, well, you, number one, remembered that moment, right? So I call it the little librarian in your mind, right? Everything's ever happened to you and all the details of it are cataloged.
Yeah, I mean, I was making the connection that, but I'm thinking it was like a familial thing, but I didn't make the connection with us being separated, which is the same thing with my mom dying. We were separated, and it's the same. So I will definitely pass, whether she'll be receptive to it or not. It's up to her. But I do think there's a connection there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But see, I had to be with you to get it. So.
Well, yeah. So here the little librarian said, "Oh, we have a record of that." Boom, pulls out the drawer, and here you are.
Yeah.
Making all these connections. Sure.
Yeah.
And that's what we all do. We all have this little librarian that remembers what you smell. The music.
Like my oil. My oils. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you put on oils, didn't you? The
Yeah.
music you hear, a certain color, a certain tone of voice triggers, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as you do the tapping, here comes the connections are being made.
But I think that was the most important thing I've gotten from today's class was if there's an emotion, then you tap.
That's
It doesn't even matter if you say anything.
Right.
And reducing the cortisol levels, because I had never made that connection before,
Right.
that's what it's doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you can think again.
Right, exactly.
Right. Well, the
Because you're in
emotion.
a fight or flight when everything's in trauma. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Just tap. You don't have to set up. You don't have to just tap. If the emotion is there, that's the gold.
Then you're already there. Yeah.
That's what you're looking for. So yeah, you don't have to go looking any further.
That's good. Yeah. I've got you starred. that quote is starred.
Right. And you don't have to come up and make sense out of it. That would be counterproductive.
Right. And you might make the wrong connection, but your body knows. Yeah.
Yes. The body knows the information. Right.
Yeah.
Can I make another confession too?
Go ahead. Your confessions are gold, Amy. I just really appreciate them.
So the other confession is that there's a part of me, I hate to say this, that still sometimes when I do tap with someone, the thought comes up is, does this really work? And like, even though when you've done it with me, it works, but I associate it more with you than, and so I guess just tapping would resolve that too. It's almost like the little librarian remembers learned helplessness, that like, what's the point of this anyway? Because it probably isn't going to work. So I don't know if the librarian also remembers not helpful things, but I guess just going to the tapping must fix that. So even if I start tapping with somebody and the thought comes out, I don't know if this works, if you're just staying with the tapping, right? But then I guess my question would be, then what? So like when they keep tapping or I have that thought and you keep going, you just ask like, what's coming up now?
That's
that
right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it. Because here's the thing, Amy, you don't know. You don't know.
But everybody in the class, when you all were tapping for me, and I couldn't even physically tap for myself. Everybody was tapping for me. When you were doing that, everybody in the group noticed when I had a shift.
Yep.
I mean, they kept tapping until I physically had a shift. And it was a deep, deep shuddering breath. I mean, and then it just felt like everything just washed off of me. So I think you'll notice when that person shifts. You don't necessarily have to ask them, because everybody noticed, even because, and we were all like one-timers. That was the first time we were there.
It was level 1. Mm-hmm.
And everybody noticed when I had the shift.
Right.
Yeah.
It's obvious to everyone but you. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you pointed it out to me, then I realized what I had done. I mean, it was that deep. It was like a cleansing breath. It was like a deep cleansing breath. Is what it was. Yeah.
Yes. Right. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. You're the observer. You're not in it. Now, here's one of the struggles maybe is because you're sensitive and you pick up energy from these people, which is one of the things you're saying about, if they're at a distance, it's a little easier. The key is for you to stay as a clear mirror and simply be reflecting what they're saying, what they're seeing, what they're experiencing. You're not in it. And that as a practice, I think I sent you the energy shield, right? Right. So for sensitive, people who are sensitive that pick up all the emotion of other people, it's important to have some kind of practice where you protect, in a sense, your energy, and you're not connecting so much with the other person's energy that you forget where you are and who you are. That's important. For sensitives, they really have to practice that. I love it because I don't really have to know anything. To do EFT, all you have to do is tap and ask them where they are now and how they're feeling now and where it's connected to an experience they may have had in the past. There's no analysis. We're not doing analysis of it. And that's what therapists have to unlearn in a way when they do EFT, is we're not analyzing anything. Now, that's not to say you can't use those other skills along with it. You just can't confuse it with that. Okay? You're just tapping and asking the question so you can be more specific about where to tap and what to tap on. That's it. You're observing then those sighs, the change in the affect. In NLP, they call it four tuples. You've got the color of the skin, the tone of the voice, the eyes. So you're watching to see where the shifts are. As you're tapping, you are paying attention to the person because that's giving you clues as to where the releases are. And once a release happens, once a sigh happens, you can stop right there. Take a breath. What just happened? How are you now? Let's go back to the original thing we started with, 0 to 10. Where is it now? The procedure in level 1 is the procedure all the way through. All the way through. Same thing over and over and over. The only difference is you can cut it short to be more specific and tap on the points that are the most effective. That's the only difference in level 2. You can shortcut. So you can be more efficient. The more you practice with this, the better you get at it. And here's the other thing, Amy. And I think we showed that last time. You're giving me credit for the changes that happened. I didn't make any changes in you. I didn't change anything. I did the same procedure, as Megan pointed out, over and over again. But because you're in it, you're giving me credit for the healing. The healing happened in you. It didn't happen in me. It didn't happen because I did something to you or made sense out of it for you. You did all that. Does that make sense? But because your little librarian says, nah, you're not that good, Amy, right? That lack of confidence, wherever that came from, okay, says, no, it must have been Ayla. It must have been somebody else because it couldn't have been me. No, I just set it up and tapped it. And Megan witnessed it. You all witnessed it. I didn't do anything different. And then I asked, well, how are you now? 0 to 10, where is it? Same procedure of every time. You're giving me credit because it's hard to take credit yourself because you were in it. You didn't know what happened, right? Your mind is not making sense out of it at that point. But when we're done, the truth of the matter is you did all the shifting. You gave me all the information. We just tapped. All I did was encourage the tapping. I kept you centered and focused on continuing the process. That's my job. Your job as teachers and as coaches is to stay with that person and keep them moving forward, keep them moving. You're not in it. You're the coach. You're saying, keep going. Let's tap some more on that. Oh, let's stop there and work on that one because I can see emotion coming up. That's your job. Your job is to keep them moving in that direction of release and not get distracted by something in you or some reaction you're having or some thought you have about it. Does that make sense? That's the hard part. The hard part is to stay as a clean mirror and just keep them going, keep them tapping. The more reaction you have, the better it is because you can tap on that. Joan, did you have something? Because you're...
No, I'm just relating very much to all of this, you know, especially with you as the expert, so to speak, because we're sisters.
Yes.
Wow.
Same issue,
I
right?
relate to this.
So I was born 3 years before Joan and she'll never catch up.
Right.
That's the issue.
We were actually told, you're the smart one. And I clean the bathrooms the best. So it's really, this is so making a difference for me. So thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yes. Yes. Yeah, you guys have all, you always saying this, like I'm doing some magic. I don't do any magic. The magic is I stay so clear on the fact that it's your issue we're tapping on and your person that your issue we're clarifying and just keep tapping. That's all I do. You give me credit for the healing you have. No, it's your healing. You did it. You released that shoulder. All I did was tap and make everybody tap with you. That's it. And then notice when it released. You made all the connections. Amy, you're not looking convinced.
I am. Yeah.
Getting
It
more
makes-
convinced.
It's a work in progress, but I'm taking it in.
Yeah, so my therapist, you know, I still am grateful to my therapist, right? He didn't do my growth. He did his growth so he could be a clean mirror so I could do my growth. Okay? But yes, I love, you know, my heart is, he's not here anymore. But yes, I grieved and my heart is with him. And I am grateful that he existed because I couldn't go to anyone else. I was referring my clients to all these other therapists. So I didn't really have confidence they could help me because I knew as much, if not more than they did. When I found him, I didn't know him. I didn't know anything about him. My friend told me about what he was doing with her. And I thought, oh, this guy could be helpful to me. I didn't trust anybody else to know more than I did. Well, no, they didn't. I was the one with all the knowledge, right? But he was always doing his own work, and he was working on those. He did inner child work on himself. He did the diamond heart approach. He was already doing all of that when I came to him. So yeah, he was in a better position as Sherpa, who was able to help me move further. And I'm grateful for that. The truth of the matter is, though, it was my deciding to do it, my continuing to come, even when there were times when I thought, oh, I must be done with this, right? And that's it. It's your intention, you're moving forward. That's what makes the change. You make the changes. The beauty of EFT is if you just do the process, it works. You've all experienced it working. Everybody is very quiet. So what's going on?
So I'll share something, Ayla, that's coming up for me.
Okay.
One of the things I'm wanting to do is just get a little more brave about introducing it. I do it when I do trauma work all the time. And it's something I tell people from the beginning that this is part of trauma work. But what I usually do is we talk about a memory and we kind of work through it. And then we go to the tapping at the end.
Okay.
And so I'm realizing, so I had a situation the other day, someone came into my office and she just said, like, I mean, it was obvious that she was just in a state of despair. She has a lot of things happening. She's very upset about the state of the world. And she's just in a place of despair. And I said to her, you know, if this wasn't trauma, but I'm like, I feel like we need to tap on this. And so we started tapping on it, and I could not believe how that I could see her energy shifting right in front of my face. And it was different than when I do it at the end of trauma work, kind of as a way to be kind of like tie it in a bow and package it up at the end. It was like she came in utter despair. And then when it was time to leave, I'm like, okay, so how are you feeling now? And she said, I feel fine. She's like, I feel so hopeful. I'm like, wow. So I guess what I'm wanting to do is like start it earlier in the session and not wait till the end. And then like, we've processed all this and now we tap on what we've processed, but like, let it be part of the processing experience itself.
Beautiful. Yep. Yes. The sooner you can get to despair, the better off you are.
Right.
I know. See, it's so counterintuitive, isn't it? Just like tapping on the negative. It's so counterintuitive because we have all this belief about affirmations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think positive. No, we want to get to that negative shit as soon as we can.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're releasing.
Mm-hmm.
Positive will come automatically, and which you observed in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get the blocks out of the way, that's our nature. Our nature, think about a child. The nature of a child is curiosity, is fearlessness. That's your nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when the conditioning's out of the way, that's what comes back. It's in you, right? You don't have to go looking for it. The more we try to force ourselves to be in that place, the worse it gets, because the ego knows better. Ego goes, you don't want to go there. Remember when you were 2 years old and you end up getting that or put in your room, or
Mm-hmm.
ego goes, no, don't be free. That's dangerous.
Yes, yes. And there's really nothing I could say to her that would have helped because the state of the world is terrible. Like, so it's like, I'm not going to be able to say like, oh, but look on the bright side. There's maybe 5% less racist in the world than there was 30 years ago or whatever. I mean,
Right.
these things are not going to be helpful. But that tapping took my ability to open her mind or help her be positive. It took all that away and just focused on what's happening in the body.
Right.
Yeah.
Precisely. Okay, so I'm going to send you, I told you about this tapping I did online with this person that was offering this code of tap. I'm going to send you the link to that because I started looking at it. It was a long session and there were really only clips. I'm going to send you also the places where I think you ought to pay attention to so you can kind of skip ahead, do this little segment, and then skip ahead and do this little segment. And then next week when we come back, I want to get your reactions and what you saw happening in that video because it's exactly what you're talking about, Megan. Okay? This person was in despair and the tapping was not specific to getting to the issue. And you'll see at the end, she didn't really change anything. Right? So there it is, just staying with the response and the reaction and tapping. That's it. You don't have to analyze. You don't have an answer. You don't have a solution. Now, how could we? Yeah, there's no way I have an answer for you. And the answers I came to, I'm surprised that those were my answers. You know? And not really your answers or somebody else's. Yours are in you. This is the beauty of this whole thing, is that the wisdom for what will work for you is actually inside you. We're just unlocking it. We're just opening the energy pathways so you can come up with it. Just like Sandy said, she made this connection. It was profound. Profound. I couldn't have made the connection for her in a million years. How could I? No way.
And yet I would have given you credit for it.
Well, you probably did, but
Yeah, I did. And then after you said that, I thought, no, I came up with that on my own, but I did need this. And I like everybody talking because it all brings up stuff for us, for everybody. It helps you clarify things. But yeah, this was a good class. This was worth the whole thing.
Yeah. So yeah, it was worth the price of admission, right? Which was
which you should be charging us for. I'm sorry, but you should.
We'll get to that at the end, what you think is worth. But I'm not charging you, but
it's priceless. I'm telling you, it's priceless.
Well, what I'm learning, and see, because I didn't know how to train the trainer, right? I'm guessing. So we're going through, because the slides tell you everything about the training. Okay. Yeah. The important thing is who's doing the training and the state you're in, and so you can unlock the wisdom you have within you that makes the connections for these folks.
And I think the more we work on ourselves, the better we'll be for everybody else, because it will be like a clear mirror. You'll reflect back what you have in you. So if you've already worked that stuff out, yeah.
Keep in mind, I have tapped, so I started this when? 2000, I can't remember, because it was before I started teaching. I had already been in doing EFT and so on. So let's say, so even if it was 2002, I've been doing this with my class, with every person in my class. I've been tapping 3 times a year for all those years. Clearer and clearer and clearer. So be kind to yourselves. Give yourself a pat on the back. Yeah.
And that's the other thing too.
And years from now, you will not be where you are today.
When you're tapping with somebody else, you're still clearing your stuff. Even if it's not in your conscious memory, that stuff is still just, and maybe it's just not important anymore, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, I mean, I do tapping every day.
You're borrowing benefits from everybody else.
Yeah.
What a gift.
I mean, really, as soon as I found out about tapping, I was like, no, everybody's got to know about this.
Yeah.
Because it's something you can give someone that they can take home with them and that they can work on their own stuff if they don't want to talk to somebody else.
So talk about lack of confidence, my friends. That's why I didn't go to the next step of teaching you the training, right? Because there isn't a train the trainers course with slides,
Oh,
right? So I went, well, what would I tell them? What would I do? I had no idea. That's why I gave this group,
yeah.
because you begged me and prodded me.
Well, I have 5 pages of notes here from today's class. I want you to know.
Yeah, maybe you can make some slides up for it.
Yeah, if I knew how to do that.
So here's what I've learned so far in these 2 classes, that it's not about just training the slides and learning how to teach the class. It's bringing my previous practitioners
That's right.
another level of connecting the dots, right? Another level of really understanding how this all works. So you can go out and teach the next group how it works.
Yeah.
So it's a combination. So we only got through half of level 1 so far. Why? Because it's not, the important thing isn't the slides. The slides will tell you everything you're gonna,
That's right.
and then you can scale it back a little bit. You can take some out, if they're not necessary. It's the principles. It's understanding the principles of the tapping and the teaching, both parts. The technique that we're teaching, which level 1, we're just teaching the technique, step by step by step. Very simple, and then you're doing it over and over again, so people at the end, they know how to tap. And their mind has caught up with why it's a good idea. And even then, what do we have here? People who still are, the tapping technique, and it's trusting it and trusting yourself. And trusting yourself is the hardest part.
Well, if you don't believe it works, you can't convince somebody else that it does.
Right.
And you have to do it to see it.
Right. And trusting yourself to be able to teach this to somebody else and have it work. I was in the same boat, right? I didn't want to teach this class because I didn't know how. Right? So there's a part of my ego saying, well, you don't know enough. Okay, that's my old ego message. You don't know enough. That's why I have a library to die for, because I don't know enough. So I had to read all this stuff, and then I still didn't know enough, right? So then I go to therapy and I do all these things to know enough. Okay. So I didn't know enough how to do this. And then I was trying to do the slides again myself. It's like I'm reinventing the wheel. No, it's trusting you. All I have to do is show up and ask you, okay, what's next that you need to know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're tapping here, right? What else do you need? I'm not confident about this. I'm not confident. I need to know. Okay, I want to be the best, Joan says. I want to absorb everything I can so I can be the best. So there's a part of your ego that says you'll never be the best because Kayla's the best and you were born 3 years later. You hear me? This is not true, but it's your conditioning. So tapping on that, right? Yes, you are the best Joan doing this. You don't have all the experiences I had. You have yours. And you teaching it is going to be just right for the people who come to you. You are the perfect teacher for them. Amy, same thing.
That's exactly right.
Teacher for your people. Sandy, you're the perfect teacher for your people. And Megan, same thing. You're going to have the language they understand. Different strokes for different folks. When I wrote my stress book, my ego said, What do you know about stress that all these other books didn't have? You know, we don't need another stress book. There's plenty of information out there. True. We don't need another stress book, and we don't need another stress perspective. But mine was different. So what did I had 34 instant stress busters. Let's not take the long route. Let's do the quick route. 34 things you can do right now that doesn't cost you another penny. I'm not talking about yoga and meditation and all these other things that work. I'm talking about just the things you can do right today in a minute with no extra time or money that you can get relief from.
Yeah.
So that's my audience, right?
Yep.
Your audience is going to be specific to you. It's the language that you use that makes sense to them.
And I think energetically, different people are drawn to different people.
Absolutely.
And I think just like, I mean, you've lived in Charleston, I've lived here all my life. I never even knew about you,
Yeah.
but I found you at the right time. And I think it's an energy thing. I think you're drawn to the people that you need at the time that you need them.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a woman who's contacted Anne after I talked to her. This is the way the world works. The universe works this way. You all know the law of attraction. I talked to Anne. What are the odds that she just revised her programs
Right.
like 2 weeks before I talked to her? And now this other woman connected with her and said, I'd like to be able to train other people. She said to her, well, guess what? Ayla's got this class she's going to be doing, teaching trainers.
Yeah. Well, I've already had a couple of people when I tell them that I'm taking your class and they're like, oh, is it online? I said, it's going to be. So,
Yeah.
so we're probably recruiting people for you too.
It'll happen because as soon as I feel like I know what I'm doing, which is happening now, right?
Yeah.
Even in 2 sessions, I'm feeling much more confident that what I really need to do is help you guys make the connections between what you already know and how to teach the class, and then also releasing whatever those barriers are to going out and doing it, right?
Yeah.
That's it. That's what this class is going to all be about. Plus, we talked about mentoring on an ongoing basis, which Megan loved that idea. So we can also do that. Yeah, nobody's done that necessarily. There are people who do mentoring. I don't know what they do, but at least what I'm going to be doing. Yeah, and so once this is complete, then I'm going to, put it out, and guess what? People will come.
They will.
Yeah.
They will.
You know what they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
And that's what happened with me and you.
Well, guess what? It works both ways. When the teacher is ready, the students will appear. Okay, so that's what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
People who like my style will come to this class. And that's great. I'm getting more confidence and trust that that's exactly how it will work. So this woman will be part of that first class. I didn't want to incorporate her into this group because you all have a trust with each other and we have a certain knowledge of each other. So I just didn't want to impose another person who doesn't know you all, doesn't know me, into this mix. So we'll put her in the first class. But this is what I'm getting more and more confident that this is what it's about. This is what the trainer is going to be about.
Yeah.
Can I ask a technical question?
Sure, Amy.
So when Megan talked about the person who came into her office immediately emotional, sometimes people that I'm working with, like somebody, for example, she's a young mom and she picks the skin like on her feet so much that it bleeds and she can hardly walk. So sometimes though I get people that have like these things, but they're not necessarily feeling them at the moment of the session. Or I have another young mom I work with who's having a lot of hormonal issues and goes crazy like 1 week a month on her period. but like, so they have these things, but they're not necessarily in the moment of the session,
Right.
but it's important. Do you, and if you've said this, forgive me because I don't remember you saying this, like, if that's an important thing, do you take them back to that, or or will we talk about that in the future? Like, where's the segue of getting people that it's almost seemed like it'd be easier if they were in the moment feeling that, but
Right.
what if it's something that comes up a lot, but it's not in that exact moment?
Right. So with the woman who picks at her feet, why did she come to you?
Because her husband tells her to stop, and her little child started noticing it, and she was feeling bad that her child was noticing her feet bleeding.
There you go. So she's feeling bad about her child's reaction. I would go with that. Say, so where do you feel this bad? What does bad mean? What do you feel, and where do you feel it? When the moment your son said, "Oh, Mom, why are your feet bleeding?" Yeah, let's start there. Because the picking at the feet is the issue she came to you for. It's because her husband's, not because she's picking at her feet, because that has not bothered her. Well, maybe it has, but she's not, that wasn't why she came. She came because it's now affecting her husband and her child, which is important to her. So where's the bridge there to her emotional?
I mean, that's really important. So the one who's hormonal and says that like 1 week a month, she's convinced she wants to get a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other 3 months, she's kind of like, still thinks maybe someday she'll get a divorce, but not as intensely as that 1 week.
Right.
I mean, so the segue isn't the hormones or the feet picking. It's actually the conflict that's causing. Okay, that's fascinating. Okay.
That's where the emotion is, because they had to be in enough angst to come and get help. So why did they come? Yeah, what is that about? That they would break through that barrier of protecting their vulnerability and coming to someone else to get help. There's something there. And in just the story you told me, that's where I would go to. The son was even the most intense emotional reaction she had. So what's that? That's where I would go.
Okay.
Talk about that. Just talking about it will probably bring up the emotion, because that's intense for her.
I mean, I totally would not have probably gone there. I would have analyzed.
Well, it's your strength,
Yeah.
right? That's your strength. And so, yeah, that's where you would go. And that's your education as well. You're a therapist. So yeah, that's all the stuff you've learned. When it comes to EFT, what you're looking for is emotion and the connection to the emotion, because the emotion tells you where something's stuck.
So at some point, would you go from what she feels compelled to pick at her feet, or would you ever even address, is that just a symptom? I know it's a symptom, but would you ever go to, even though I feel bad about picking at my feet, or how would
You might, if that's what she came for, is her issue, but she didn't. She came for the
or her
child
son?
that was reacting. Yeah.
Well, she said she came for that issue, but she said she came for picking her feet, but then then she gets into.
But would you ever tap on, even though I feel bad for picking at my feet, I deeply and completely love and accept myself? At
She felt
any
bad
point,
about it. Yeah, that's where the feeling.
or would that be something that she could do for herself at home?
Sure.
And do the other emotions when she's with Amy?
Sure.
Because it's obviously a stress thing. That's the reason she's doing it. So that if that would lower the cortisol level, it might lower her need to do that.
It might. Yeah. So we don't know the answers to those questions, but we do know that something triggers. So I might ask the question, when do you start picking at your feet? Is it all day long, or is it at certain points or certain moments? Because that gives us a clue as to what's going on right before she picks on her feet.
Well, and I'm going to need
Right.
therapy because she was picking on her feet during her session.
And it was bothering you.
I can even tell she was, because she sits with her feet to her side. And I even said, "Are you picking on your feet now?" And she's like, "Yes." And
Yeah.
so we tapped on that. Like, I'm like, "Well, then tell me now what you're feeling as you're
Good.
picking on your feet."
Yeah.
But yeah, but see, like, then where I go is, when did you start picking on your feet? You know, well, like in childhood when her mother abandoned her, and we go down that hole. So you're saying don't even go down that, though, is what you're saying? Like,
Well, you can, I mean, you can go anywhere where there's emotion. If she already knows where it started. Now, it's interesting, how old was she when that started? Because I'm going to suspect that her son may be close to the age that she was when she was abandoned by her mother, and his angst about her picking might be a part of remembering.
okay.
He doesn't. I have no idea. We're guessing, and I wouldn't even go with my theory. I would just go with where she's at and what she's feeling, not why. Okay, somebody, what class I was in where they said never ask why, because the answer to why is because. Okay, why is not the question. The question is, when did it start, and what do you feel, and how is it for you, and how are you feeling, and how do you feel? Yeah, my guys are working on the yard. So it's not why, because we don't know why.
Mhm.
If she knew why, even if she knows why, it doesn't change it, right? It doesn't take it away. So what you're looking for is, how do we release it?
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm really delighted you're bringing these things up, because that's what stops it, right? So we're gonna, it's now 2:00. Yes, it's 2:00. So let's stop there. Okay, between now and the next class, do your own tapping on what stops you, right? What stops you? What is it that makes you feel less confident or less trusting of yourself and life? That's what Amy said. Megan said being present. What stops you from being more present to the emotion? So what you usually do is do a lot of discussion first and then get to it. What would stop you from getting to it earlier? And then Sandy just said, learn as much as I can. So look at what are the barriers to teaching this? What would stop you from having your first class? In fact, why don't you even imagine setting up your first class, picking a date, and see what comes up? Okay, see what comes up and tap on that. Okay, so let's do that between now and then. And in the meantime, I'll send you some additional, I'll send you that video with the time frames that I think are most useful. And then we'll go on with the rest of level 1, and we'll probably start on level 2. I'll send you the level 2 as well. Sound good?
Thank you.
Yeah, Joan?
Will you send us this video too?
Oh yeah, I'll post this video too.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Were you able to get connected to the video?
The first one, yeah.
Did the rest of you try to get connected? Okay.
And I took notes. So
Yes,
Megan, would you check in? Would you check in on
Brian.
Brian and see if he did that, and any feedback he might have?
Okay, great. I will.
Okay.
I sent a message. I've got to get off here, but I appreciate you so much, Ayla, and all of you for everything you contributed to today.
Bless you,
Ayla.
bless you all on your weekend. Let me know.
See you next week.
Appreciate
Okay,
it.
bye-bye. Thank you
Bye,
so much
Amy.
for all the questions you asked. Thank you for all the questions and all the feedback.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.